What is the most taboo thing you've done? My dad passed away in April and he had a cat he loved more than life. She was 16 years old and followed him within 4 weeks. I had her cremated, put in a biodegradable urn, and went to my pop's grave. My sis and I pretended to be planting some new flowers, and we snuck the cat's urn under the plant, about 4 feet deep. I hope they're chilling together again like they used to. That's just sweet. I'm sorry for your loss. Slept with a girl on a gondola boat in Venice. We just pulled up the tarp, got under, and had X. Alice, if you see this, thank you. When I was at uni between 18 to 20, my landlady, late 40s, early 50s maybe, offered me a reduced rent for favors. I accepted the offer. It was only about once a month or so, but I'd get a few days taken off the monthly rent in exchange for a couple of hours in her bedroom. Seemed like a good deal at the time, and I've got no regrets. Having X with a roommate was a bad idea. Having X with 2 of my roommates was a really bad idea. You looking for a roommate? I flashed my chest to my dying friend when I was 16 because he'd never seen a pair of melons before. Rest in peace, Michael. Weirdly wholesome. Banged in the rain on my parents' front lawn while back on break from college. Hadn't seen girlfriend in a while, so she sneaked by and I think I found a spot no one would see us. But I went outside in the rain for a while, came back with muddy knees on my jeans, and my dad's not stupid. Should have smeared mud all over and tell him you fell. When I was younger, we lived in a house in front of some woods. My sister and her boyfriend, not boyfriend, boy who was a friend, went for a walk. Me and my other sister were like, okay, don't get pregnant. She yelled that they weren't having X. She comes back with dirt on her knees, and he has dirt on the back of his shirt and nowhere else. Said they fell. We were like, yeah, fell on his du nasty ass. Years later she confessed that they did have X, and me and my other sister were like, we know bro, we know. Never saw that guy again. I didn't even get his name now that I think about it. I fell asleep during my X eating my private part. In my defense, I had been on a 48-hour bender. And to make matters worse, if it can get any worse, he only knew I was asleep because I started snoring, and as I have sleep apnea, it wasn't just your everyday gentle snoring, it was broken steam train derailing kind of snoring. When my husband and I were dating, we both still lived with our parents. We were our high school sweethearts. We were making out on his bed, and he heard the door before I did. He took the opportunity to just straight up push me off of the bed and onto the floor. Because that's not obvious, his dad opening the door to me just landing flat on my ass while husband has a deer in headlights look. I got drunk with a girl I knew from college and took her home. My roommates also had people over partying and such. I take her upstairs and a friend of mine is sleeping on the floor in my room because it was the only quiet place. She's done it a couple times already when we've had people over. Girl from college still wants to do it, so we try to be as quiet as we can until my friend on the floor says, "Can I watch?" So she watched us go at it while getting herself off. It was crazy hot. No 3 sons though. Friend with benefits sucking my D, phone rings. She answers, barely removes PP to say hello. Spins the entire call slobbing on my knob, like corn on the cob. A few of us and us mumbled around my thing. Eventually says bye, hangs up. Sorry, that was my sister, she's been taken into hospital. The red flag-o-meter should have exploded at that point, but I was preoccupied. Stayed in a nice hotel in York. Didn't think to bring a swimming costume. Checked out the pool, which we found out closed 20 minutes prior. The ladies' changing room door was open, so we decided to go down in our underwear and dressing gowns. Had a little swim, sat in the hot tub and started making out. Decided to check whether the steam room was working. Ended up having a quickie in there. Made sure we didn't make a mess, then carried on swimming. 2 minutes later the staff came in and checked whether anyone else was in there and told us the pool was closed. We played dumb and got out. Probably the most taboo thing I've ever done. Removing USB thumb drive without ejecting. Straight to jail. I had a 3 sons with my then current girlfriend and her best friend who was my ex. Edit, it was on a cruise. My then ex had a falling out with this new girl she was dating, and we all had gotten tickets cheap on Groupon LMAO. They got in a fight, and my then girlfriend, who was her best friend, was comforting her. We all couldn't go anywhere, and we were drunk, and my ex didn't want to go back to her cabin, which was next door, and they were both bi. And did I mention we had been drinking? I didn't pursue it or organize it, but it was great. At the age of 26, had a relationship that lasted a year or so with a friend of my mother's. A woman who put on the air of being the prim, proper, and quiet piano teacher she was. However, in private had a large appetite for F-word, which she very skilled at and loved. Growing up for a while, we didn't have handles on any interior doors. My dad built the house and we had to move before it was completely done because they sold the old house faster than expected, and Dad is lazy. We would look through the door hole in the bathroom at each other so we could be like, haha, I saw your butt. I distinctly remember the last time I did it. Suddenly it just seemed gross to me. I didn't want to see my brother's junk. Eventually the Westermark effect sets in. I wore a two-piece bathing suit at a church picnic beach day when all the other girls were wearing one-piece bathing suits. To me, it seemed hypocritical that almost every girl there usually wore a two-piece and had been seen in one by friends and family, but kept an old one-piece around specifically for church events. I guess this is why some parents thought I was a bad influence. Mild compared to some other stories here, and I have done things that were technically worse, but in terms of scandal, that one was the biggest. Gave a BJ in a dinosaur museum behind a curtain in the rock and crystal collection. Jesus Christ Marie, they're not rocks. They're minerals. Touched my cousin's chest. We were camping and a bunch of us snuck off to go skinny dipping at night. The next night she asked me if I wanted to go with just her, and once we were in the water she started painfully groping my junk, so I went for her chest. After maybe a minute I went for a kiss. She pushed me away and called me a creep. Apparently a kiss is too far. Okay, this is a weird one, because to this day, I'm not sure how much I've imagined or embellished over the years as a false memory, but I know the core of it is true. When I used to go to the swimming pool with my best friend, we were both like 12, 13-ish. We always used the communal changing room. Can't even remember why we started doing that. One time, she kept trying to persuade me to drop my towel and show her my chest. She dropped hers and danced around all over the changing room, and eventually I did too, but with a little less dancing. It then became a thing for us to just casually get naked together at the pool, but nothing that I can recall ever happened beyond that. I have a vague memory of letting her touch my chest, but it's not clear enough for me to say whether that's an embellishment. I do remember, however, being very disappointed the one time we went and the communal room was occupied. In retrospect, I'm pretty sure she was my first bisexual awakening, LOL, though I didn't clock it at the time. I live in a conservative country, so a lot of what I did and still do as a woman is not only taboo, but also illegal, LOL. For example, cohabitation with the opposite sex could have gotten me a prostitution charge when I shared a flat with my two guy friends for a year. Actual relations outside of marriage, actual relations with the opposite sex, alcohol consumption, and many more. Basically my whole existence. A Saudi girl in a traditional Saudi restaurant in Saudi itself, which means they had rooms for privacy, but the top of the walls are open about a foot from the roof, so you can hear everything going on. The door didn't have a lock, so we did it doggy style while I kept my foot against the door so it couldn't be swung open. Grew up in a house where the garage was separated by a long flight of stairs. I had just got an Xbox, and my parents set up my Xbox in the garage so they didn't have to listen to all the noise. I was so jazzed out playing games I didn't want to walk up the stairs to take a leak. I peed in a corner of the big-ass garage. My dad blamed it on the cats. There was a bit of a stench. He hates those cats till the day they died, and I've told no one. This comment section has told me my life has been a lot more boring than I realized. I guess it would be the time I was talking to a guy who kept going hot and cold. Hadn't hooked up yet, but we hung out because he was an old friend. I went to his house, lived with his brother, to hang one night, and he acted like I wasn't even there. On my way out, his brother, who I'd never seen that way, I'm a one-at-a-time person even when single, made a very convincing pitch, so I dated him instead. No regrets, it didn't work out, but we had a good time. So I guess the answer is I made out with both brothers. In college, I spent a lot of time in the music building for some choral stuff and piano and voice for my minor. We had 2 levels of practice rooms that had really slim windows. Most people used the upper level and the lower level only got half usage during classes. I had an ex with whom I frequently got hot and heavy both in her private practice room for pianists and a small, locked hallway. They had a half dozen grands whose back faced the door, so if you looked over the piano, you could just see the window, and in the regular practice rooms after we'd broken up, lights off, but that was no guarantee. There were no locks and the hallway was bright and the right angle would make some curious and be obvious to others. We were always super close to doing it, but usually settled for mutual pleasure with our clothes mostly open. Exciting, but an unsustainable relationship, ultimately. Later, a girlfriend with whom I'd been intimate, but not official, and I were talking and passing time and were discussing random topics and landed on how we'd not done it in quite a while. A few comments later, she mentioned how she was hungry and I made some lewd comment, and next thing you know, she was giving me or all in one of the lower level practice rooms. Lights off, of course, but super obvious. If anyone had opened the door inadvertently, we'd have been busted. It was very exciting. She was lovely and very exciting, unafraid to experiment, bold and quite frank, actually many of the things I desired in a significant other, but I was weeks away from graduating and moving across the country and didn't want to leave any loose ends back home. She's fine, I'm fine. We both finally ended up quite happy with our lives. Can't speak for her, but I had a few really shitty years along the way. We interact here and there on social media, and I think of her fondly, and I hope she does the same, so things worked out in the end. I'm a swinger and into Group X, so I'm guessing a lot of taboo things. Still, something that comes to mind from recently, daring a friend with benefits of mine who is usually really loud to have but X with me on my balcony at night, middle of the city, her holding onto the railing, towards a courtyard full of other balconies. She took it like a champ and didn't more than breathe heavily. And we were, probably, not noticed. Okay, a very long time ago, I wound up doing it with a priest. Not my fault he was naked at the time, so I didn't know until he told me after. He wound up crying for an hour and said that he was going to leave the church. I thought for sure I was going to hell. Had a girlfriend who left me for another dude, so I moved in with her stepmom 2 weeks later and ended up moving out of state with her. Did it for revenge, which worked cause the ex got all obsessive about how much she still loved me and how big of a mistake she made, but by then I was blowing stepmoms back out 6 times a day. Did it on a graveyard? I was like 16 and I'm not proud of this. In hindsight, it disgusts me. Did you put them back in the coffin afterwards? Had loud X with my professor in my school's parking garage, both in the car and outside of it. I didn't need any kind of grade change. I didn't find myself in an "oh, I can't keep my hands off him" type situation. I just really wanted to F a teacher. Not sure where that urge came from, but it was definitely worth the wait. My best friend and I tag teamed my ex-girlfriend's mom. She came back the next night for round 2. I also slept with her 2 daughters within a year and then got back with my ex for a while. Not the most taboo thing I've done, but definitely pretty greasy. During the pandemic, my friends and I would have Xbox parties where we'd all buy Coke and liquor and party with each other over Xbox Live. The feeling of taking off your headset and realizing you've sniffed a half ball by yourself was unforgettable, lol. Damn, I've had a boring life. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Also check out our other videos and have an amazing day.